Welcome to our deep dive, and today we're taking a look at this book you shared with me, Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull.
Ah, yeah.
And it's Pixar, so it's behind the scenes stories about all the movies we love.
Yeah.
But it's also so much more than that. It's really a guide to building a creative culture anywhere, right?
It really is.
It is.
And I think what's so interesting is that Catmull doesn't shy away from the struggles.
Right.
He really embraces the fact that they messed up, that things went wrong, and that's how they learned.
Okay, well, I gotta know, what's one of the big things that went wrong? What stands out?
Well, imagine this. Pixar, on the cusp of releasing Toy Story 2, suddenly realizes almost all of the film's data is gone.
No way.
It's a crisis. It's like, how do they even recover from that?
So they almost lost Toy Story 2. Like, are you serious?
It was close. And that becomes a catalyst for some of their most important innovations.
Wow.
And this is where the brain trust really comes into its own.
Okay, the brain trust. Now that sounds a little mysterious. Is this like some kind of secret society or?
No secret handshakes,
Okay.
but it is a group of trusted advisors, really experienced storytellers who come together and they give candid feedback on the films.
So even at a place like Pixar, they're not afraid to say, hey, we need help.
Exactly. They realize they don't have all the answers.
Wow.
And that's something you can apply anywhere.
Right. I mean, so much of creativity we think is individual, but this is about harnessing all those minds together.
Absolutely.
Now let's rewind a little bit, though. Before Pixar was, this animation powerhouse, I mean, it was really just Ed Catmull,
Right.
this guy with a passion for computers and a dream of seeing these stories come to life through animation. So,
Yeah, and what's fascinating is that that background in computers really shaped how he thought about leading creative teams.
okay.
Because he saw them as these complex systems.
Interesting.
Just like you have to have the right connections and the right people
Right.
for a computer to work.
Yeah.
You need that for a team to work.
Okay, so how did this computer guy end up at the forefront of animation? Was it like a straight shot to the top or?
Not quite. There was a lot of resistance back then.
Really?
Hollywood was not ready for computer animation.
I guess. Yeah, it was a new thing.
Even at Lucasfilm, where he worked on some pretty groundbreaking visual effects,
Uh-huh.
there was a reluctance to fully embrace it.
That's so interesting thinking about how animation is just everywhere now. I mean,
Yeah.
but it was once seen as this radical thing.
Exactly.
That people were like, whoa, 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 slow down.
And that makes you wonder what groundbreaking ideas are being overlooked today
Oh, yeah.
that people are afraid of.
Makes you think.
Because that's what true innovation is, challenging the status quo.
So how did Catmull finally get to make the animated films he always dreamed of?
Well, enter John Lasseter,
Okay.
this young, passionate animator who shared that vision. And they formed this incredible partnership,
Okay.
combining the technical brilliance of Catmull with Lasseter's storytelling genius.
Wow. Okay. So we got the computer whiz and then the storytelling maestro. I love it.
Yeah, it's a dream team.
That's amazing.
But getting funding for this company that was basically trying to reinvent animation,
Yeah, I bet that wasn't easy.
it was not. Countless rejections.
Really?
They almost went in a completely different direction.
Oh, is that right?
Can you imagine Pixar not as a film studio, but as a division of a major car company?
Wait, so Pixar making car commercials? What?
It could have happened.
Wow.
But ultimately, they were led to an unlikely investor, someone with a reputation for being brilliant, demanding, and maybe a little intense.
I think I know who you're going to say.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs.
Of course.
And this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Catmull and Jobs, despite their vastly different personalities, they form this unlikely partnership that shapes Pixar's destiny.
Okay, so we've got the technical genius, the storytelling maestro, and now the demanding visionary entrepreneur.
Exactly.
Quite a team.
And it's a reminder that the most successful collaborations can come from the most unexpected places.
I love that there.
Finding people that complement your strengths,
Yeah.
even if they drive you a little crazy sometimes.
Yeah, I relate to that. Okay, but even with this dream team, I mean, I'm guessing there were still some challenges ahead, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And probably some big ones.
And some of those challenges would actually lead to their most important innovations.
Okay, well, you gotta tell me more about this.
All right, well, remember that almost catastrophic loss of data for Toy Story 2.
Yes.
That's just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, no.
That experience, along with the challenges of just making Toy Story in the first place, they had to confront some fundamental questions about their creative process.
So it wasn't just the technology, but how they were working together
Exactly.
as a team.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is where Catmull's insights are just so valuable
Mm.
because he shows that building a sustainable creative culture isn't just about hiring talented people and saying, go do your thing. It's about creating a system,
Uh-huh.
a set of principles and practices that help those people thrive.
Okay, I'm ready to unpack some of those principles.
Okay,
What are some of the big takeaways from what Catmull learned, and how can we use those?
well, let's start with one of the most important and maybe the most surprising. Getting the team right is more important than getting the right idea.
Wait, really? So the idea isn't king?
It's not about just the idea itself. You can have the most brilliant idea, but if you don't have the right team to bring it to life,
Yeah.
it's useless.
Got to have those people that can actually execute on it.
Exactly. People with the skills and the talent, but also the right attitude, that willingness to collaborate, to
Yeah.
communicate
You'd
openly,
be open to failure.
and to embrace those moments of failure. Absolutely.
Because I feel like that's such a big part of creativity,
It is.
but it's scary.
It is scary.
And, I think that leads into the next thing you were talking about, like that idea of candor.
Yes, and it's more than just honesty. It's about creating that culture where people feel safe to say what they really think.
Right, but that's hard
It is hard.
because sometimes, you're afraid of offending somebody or...
Absolutely, or getting shut down or
Yeah.
hurting someone's feeling.
But how do you do that? How do you create that culture?
That's where the brain trust comes in.
Okay, the brain trust. I'm dying to know more about this, but I think we're going to have to pause there. We've covered a lot of ground, from Catmull's love of computers to how Pixar formed, those early struggles of getting those first films out there.
Yeah,
But there's so much more to dig into, so
there is.
we'll be back soon to explore the brain trust and beyond, so stay tuned.
Sounds good. All right, so let's unpack this brain trust a little bit
Yes, please.
because it's more than just a meeting. It's really a philosophy,
Okay.
a way of approaching feedback, and you can use this anywhere, not just in making movies.
All right, so no secret handshakes, just honest feedback.
Just honest feedback, but there's an art to it. Imagine you've got a group of really experienced storytellers. Could be a director, a screenwriter, a storyboard artist, and they're gathered around, let's say, a rough cut of a film.
Oh, okay.
And they're not there to tear it apart.
Right.
They're there to help each other see it more clearly.
But I've been in so many meetings where feedback feels more like a competition than a collaboration.
And that's what's so different about the brain trust.
Okay.
They operate on this foundation of trust and respect.
Okay.
So they're not trying to win arguments. They're not trying to impose their vision. They're focused on the story.
Uh-huh.
And the feedback is always additive.
What does that mean?
So they're building on each other's ideas, not tearing them down.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
It does, yeah, but giving and receiving criticism, even when it's, with the best of intentions,
Right.
can be so hard.
It is, and Catmull talks about that.
Yeah.
He acknowledges that candor takes courage
It does.
to give it and to receive it.
Yeah.
Because you have to overcome those deep-seated fears we all have,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Like, oh, am I going to sound stupid? Or what if they reject my idea? Or I don't want to hurt someone's feelings.
Exactly. All those things.
We've all been there.
And so how do you get past those fears? How do you create that space where people feel safe enough to actually be candid?
Well, it starts with leadership.
Okay.
Leaders have to set the tone. And they have to be willing to be vulnerable themselves,
Uh-huh.
to admit when they've messed up,
Right.
to actively solicit feedback.
Okay, but it can't just be on the leaders, right?
No, it's got to be the whole team.
Yeah.
Everyone has to buy into this idea that honest feedback, even when it's hard, is a gift.
Okay, I like that.
It's an opportunity to get better,
To grow.
to grow, to learn.
All right, so let's say we've got this culture of candor. We've got the brain trust in place.
Right.
But what happens when you just hit a wall?
Yeah.
When things just aren't working?
Well, this is where another key principle comes in, and that's embracing failure.
Okay, my brain is like short-circuiting right now because we're taught our whole lives to avoid failure.
I know, right? It seems counterintuitive.
Yes, like how can embracing failure possibly lead to success?
Well, think about it.
Okay.
Whenever you're doing something creative, you're exploring, right?
Yeah.
You're going into uncharted territory,
Yeah.
and you're going to try things that have never been done before.
Right?
And some of those attempts, they're going to fail.
That's true, but how do you know if it's a productive failure?
Right. How do you tell the difference?
Yeah, one that teaches you something versus one that just, sets you back.
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And that's what Catmull is trying to get at.
Okay.
He says it's about creating a culture where failure is seen as a necessary part of learning.
Okay.
You have to shift your mindset
Right.
from seeing it as this setback to seeing it as a valuable opportunity to course correct.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
So you take those risks, you take those leaps of faith, knowing that even if you stumble, you're going to learn something from it.
You got to trust yourself and trust the people you're working with.
And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Having that trust in yourself and the people around you.
Okay, so how do you create that, like that environment where people feel supported, even when they make mistakes?
That's where leadership comes in again.
Okay.
They have to create that environment where it's safe to admit mistakes.
Yeah.
You're not punished for taking risks.
Uh-huh.
You're encouraged to learn from those failures.
That's great in theory, but I'm still a little, I don't know, I still want to cling to that control.
Right, that illusion of control.
Yeah.
That if I plan everything perfectly, I can avoid those messy stumbles. That's human nature.
Right.
We crave certainty, but the truth is,
Yeah.
creativity is messy, it's unpredictable,
It is.
and you have to embrace that.
Okay, so we've talked about candor, the brain trust, embracing failure.
Yeah.
How do you balance all that with the demands of, the real world? Deadlines, budgets.
And that's where this tension between feeding the beast and protecting the new comes into play.
Remind me what feeding the beast is again.
It's that constant pressure to produce, to churn out content.
Right, like just keep the wheels turning.
Yeah, keep the wheels turning. And it can be seductive, especially when you're focused on those short-term gains.
It's like a hamster wheel.
It is. And that's why Catmull says it's so important to protect the new.
Okay.
Those fragile new ideas that need time and space to grow.
So it's about resisting that urge to just pump out more of the same.
Exactly.
And instead, like, making space to experiment, to explore those ideas that might not be proven yet.
Exactly.
This is resonating so much because I think sometimes we get so caught up in like what's already working that we forget to look for the new thing.
And we get afraid to venture too far from what's familiar, from what we know is safe.
Totally.
And this is where leadership is so important.
Okay.
It's about creating a culture where people feel empowered to challenge the status quo, to experiment, to take those risks.
So how do you strike that balance between feeding the beast and protecting the new?
There's no easy answer.
Right.
But Catmull offers some insights based on what they did at Pixar.
Okay.
He talks about creating dedicated spaces for exploration, for nurturing those early stage ideas, and having leaders who are champions for those new ideas.
So they're kind of like shielding them from the beast.
Exactly, shielding them from that pressure.
Do you have an example of like how they did that at Pixar?
Well, think about the development of Up.
Oh, okay.
That initial concept, a floating city,
Yeah.
visually stunning, but as they got deeper into the story, they realized it wasn't working.
Really?
It didn't have the emotional depth.
Wow.
So they weren't afraid to make those tough calls, even if it meant delaying the production.
Oh, wow.
And that decision led to some of the most memorable elements of that film.
Like what?
Remember those research trips to Venezuela?
Oh, yeah.
Where they went to those incredible tabletop mountains?
Oh, yes. Those research trips are legendary.
It's like they're sending their creatives on these incredible adventures to spark their imagination.
I love that.
It's about recognizing that inspiration can come from anywhere.
Right.
From stepping outside your comfort zone, immersing yourself in new experiences.
Which brings us back to research, because it's not just about gathering information, it's about opening yourself up to those possibilities.
Right. Being surprised, being delighted by the world around you.
Okay, so we've explored candor, embracing failure, the balance between feeding the beast and protecting the new. What else did Catmull learn along the way?
Well, he talks about the importance of continuous learning, of creating a culture where everyone's encouraged to grow their skills and knowledge.
Okay.
He even shares some specific mental models.
Mental models?
Yeah, frameworks for thinking about the creative process.
Okay, you got to tell me more about this, but I think that's a good place to pause.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
And there's still so much more to explore.
Yeah.
So we'll be back soon to delve into those mental models and more.
Sounds good.
Stay tuned. All right, so we're back. And we're continuing our deep dive into Ed Catmull's Creativity, Inc.
Yeah.
We've talked about building a creative culture, embracing failure, protecting new ideas. And now I kind of want to get into how Pixar navigated one of its biggest challenges, the merger with Disney. I
Right.
mean, merging two creative powerhouses like that, each with their own identity,
Yeah.
it had to be a delicate dance.
It was, and Catmull talks about the need to protect Pixar's culture while also trying to revitalize Disney animation, which had been facing its own struggles.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned that even something as simple as like Pixar's research trips
Right.
that met with some resistance at Disney.
Yeah, it wasn't that Disney was anti-research, it's just they often emphasized efficiency,
Okay.
so locking down the story early
Uh-huh.
and moving into production quickly.
That feed the beast mentality.
Exactly, and sometimes that focus on speed, it can come at the expense of exploration and discovery, which are so crucial.
Yeah, so how did they bridge that gap? Did Pixar just say, hey, trust us, research trips are awesome?
It wasn't that simple.
Okay.
It took time, patience, a willingness to learn from each other.
Uh-huh.
And I think the success of Tangled, which embraced that research trip process, was a turning point.
Okay.
They sent the team to Europe to really immerse themselves in the world of the story.
Cool.
And it resulted in this film that felt fresh, visually stunning.
It's amazing how one film can really demonstrate the power of a good idea.
It really is.
But even with successes like Tangled, I mean, integrating two companies that big, there had to be some growing pains, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, for some of those.
As Pixar grew, it became harder to maintain that open, collaborative culture.
Right.
And the productions were just getting more and more complex.
Uh-huh.
And that put a strain on their systems, so that's where this idea of note stay comes in.
Note stay. Okay, what is that?
It was like a giant company-wide post-mortem.
Oh, okay.
But instead of focusing on a single film, they were examining the entire studio.
Huh, interesting.
They were identifying problems, brainstorming solutions.
So like a big checkup.
Yeah, like a checkup.
Okay.
And they had anonymous suggestion boxes
Ooh, anonymous. That's brave.
that focused discussions, all designed to tap into the collective wisdom of everyone at Pixar.
That's really cool. But were they like bracing for impact with those anonymous suggestions?
Well, it was about creating that safe space for honesty.
Okay.
Remember, candor,
Yeah, yeah.
one of their core values.
Mm-hmm.
And even John Lasseter, the chief creative officer,
Wow.
stood up on Notes Day, acknowledged the critical feedback he'd received, setting the tone.
That's huge.
It was.
Okay, but did it lead to any actual changes?
Absolutely. They made improvements in creative oversight, budgeting, resource allocation.
That's great.
But I think more importantly, it reinforced that culture of open communication,
Yeah.
proving that even a big company can benefit from taking a step back, listening to everyone.
So we're seeing that these principles, candor, embracing failure, protecting the new, it's not just lip service.
Right.
This is baked into how they operate.
It's part of their DNA.
It's so cool.
And it played a big role in helping them navigate that merger with Disney.
And it shows that it's not just for animation studios.
Exactly.
These are things that can apply anywhere.
Absolutely. To any team, any organization that's trying to be creative.
Okay, but we got to talk about Steve Jobs, right?
Yeah.
We can't leave him out of this. It's easy to focus on the demanding side of him, the abrasive side.
Right. But he was crucial to Pixar's success.
For sure.
And Catmull gives this really nuanced portrait of him,
Yeah.
acknowledging his flaws, but also celebrating his vision, his leadership.
Yeah.
He even reframes that famous reality distortion field.
Oh, how did he do that?
He sees it not as manipulation, but as this testament to Jobs' unwavering belief in what was possible.
So it's not just about pushing people hard.
No, it's about inspiring them.
To reach for those things that maybe they didn't even think were possible.
Exactly. And that's such an important lesson for leaders.
Absolutely.
It's not enough to have the vision. You have to communicate it in a way that inspires.
That's a great point. So after this deep dive into Creativity, Inc., what are the big takeaways for our listener?
Well, I think it reminds us that building a creative culture, it's not about magic formulas.
Right.
It's about fostering these principles, these practices that help people do their best work.
Yeah.
It's about embracing candor, learning from failure, protecting those new ideas.
And being mindful of those hidden barriers.
Yes, those fears, those assumptions that can stifle creativity.
So asking ourselves, what are those barriers for me?
Right. What can I do to break them down?
To create a more open, collaborative space.
Exactly.
What are some of those mental models that Catmull talks about that our listener could use?
Well, there's Andrew Stanton's analogy of the ship captain having to make decisions with limited information
Right.
and constantly course correcting.
Right.
That's so valuable.
Totally.
And then there's John Walker's upside down pyramid, remembering that as a producer, your job is to support the team, not to micromanage them.
It's all about empowering people.
Yeah, giving them the space to do their best work.
I think these mental models are so helpful
They are.
because they give us a framework for thinking about these challenges.
And making sense of the chaos.
This has been such a great conversation exploring how Pixar works
It has.
and learning these lessons that we can apply anywhere.
Absolutely.
I feel like we just scratched the surface.
We did.
But hopefully it sparked some new ideas for our listeners.
I hope so.
And inspired you to think differently about creativity.
And if you want more, definitely pick up a copy of Creativity, Inc.
It's such a good book.
It's a book that stays with you.
Yeah.
Makes you ask questions.
And who knows, maybe you'll be inspired to take a belly dancing class at Pixar University.
I'd love to see that.
All right, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Creativity, Inc.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time for another exploration of the world of ideas.
Looking forward to it.
Until then, keep those creative sparks flying.